We're here with Reynald Raymond, and you're the big boss here at, what do you call the place? Is this still a hospital it's called?
No. It's, the name of the agency is now Northern Maine General. It's no longer Northern Maine General Hospital. It stopped being a hospital in 1966.
Oh, that far?
Yes.
So it's known as Northern Maine General, which means nursing and
we provide
rehab?
We provide a variety of services now. We're still in healthcare, but we're not in acute healthcare.
Oh, okay.
We provide long-term care, and we provide care for children, mental health services for children, as well as services for people with developmental disabilities. We have, right now, the agency has roughly 10 divisions, 10 different services that we provide, and we employ somewhere between 275 to 300 people.
Wow. In Eagle Lake, Maine.
Yes.
That's a big industry.
Yes, it is. And the irony is that only 23% of the people we hire come from Eagle Lake. The rest come from surrounding areas, from as far as Allagash, Caribou, Presque Isle. We have some from Van Buren. So used to be that most of the people who work for us came from Eagle Lake, but that's no longer the case now.
Is it because there's not enough people in Eagle Lake? Or?
Oh yeah, there's not enough people to sustain the business that we would have.
Yeah. So what's your capacity for the people that you work with, the patients?
Well, on the nursing home side, we have a 40-bed nursing home. And then in the unit itself, we have 10 beds that we've blocked off for what is called residential care. So at the nursing home, we provide 3 different levels of services. We provide nursing, then we provide skill, or what they call rehab, and we also provide residential care.
What is residential care?
Residential care is another term that's oftentimes used there is assisted living. So this is for people who medically are not needy enough to be in a nursing home, but they cannot really independently stay in their own homes.
Okay. So they can go out and drive their car.
Oh yeah, they can go out and drive their car. They simply all they do is they rent a place from us, and we provide them the services that they need.
Okay, so that's great. That's a great service. Then the kids you talk about there, what's that all about? Children?
Well, we provide assistance to parents who have children with emotional or behavioral issues. We go into their homes. We have case managers that go into their homes and work with them. They develop a plan, a behavioral plan, and they follow the child along with the parent. The parent and the child is involved in trying to figure out, first of all, what some of the triggers are, and then based on those triggers, a plan is developed, and then the plan is implemented for the child as well as to the parent.
So they're not residents?
No, they're not residents.
Oh, okay.
Those are in-home supports that we provide for kids with behavioral needs, or kids that have developmental disabilities.
And how far is your area that you serve?
We cover all of northern Aroostook, from Presque Isle north.
Really?
Yes.
So
we serve somewheres right now. We're serving somewheres in one program. In the developmental disability program for children, we serve, I believe it's around 28 kids. And then in the other program, in-home services for behavioral health needs, we serve probably another 15 kids there.
Hmm.
So we do that in Caribou, Presque Isle, Fort Kent.
So you're the only one that's doing that there?
No, there are other agencies that do it as well.
Area?
Yes, in the same area. Yeah.
So they have a choice. They want to.
Yes, they have a choice of providers
to do it.
Yes.
Now, Reynald Raymond, you're the big boss here, and how long have you been doing this?
I've been CEO here for 20 years.
20 years.
Yes.
Now, you told me a while ago, because we've talked before, that your family comes from Saint Agathe.
Yes.
And what brought them to Eagle Lake?
My grandparents, on the Raymond side, came from Frenchville. My grandmother, who eventually married my grandfather, came from Saint Agathe. She was a Ranguette.
Okay.
And,
now the Raymonds, like Morris Raymond, who worked for the railroad there, Don
no,
Raymond?
I don't have. It's strange. The Raymond family that moved from Frenchville, all of them moved from Frenchville to Eagle Lake. So I have no relatives that I know of in Frenchville.
Oh.
They moved all here. The grandfather, or my great grandfather, moved, and he moved all his family. And his family was pretty much, the youngest one must have been in their 30s when they moved. It was a family that lived on a farm.
Oh, okay.
And they decided that when they heard about some of the opportunities that the mill here in Eagle Lake provided, they were having a hard time on their farm. They decided to sell the farm and move here.
So we're talking 100 years ago?
Yeah, it was probably around in early 1900s, around 1903, 1904.
Now, what was the big attraction here in Eagle Lake?
Well, here in Eagle Lake, it was like exciting times there. The railroad had just come through, or was in the process of coming through. They had a company by the name of Eagle Lake Lumber Company had just built a series of mills. They had bought roughly 125 acres on the southeastern shore of Eagle Lake.
That's where the old Main Street is?
Yeah, right there. The old Main Street, right just below the railroad tracks, where we have the marina today.
Okay.
That whole section from the railroad tracks down to very close to Fish River camps. There, the camps they used to call Camps of Acadia.
Yeah.
Up all the way there was pretty much owned by Fish River Lumber Company. So they operated basically 5 different mills. They had a rotary mill, they had a shingle mill, they had a lath mill, they had a kindling mill, and then they had planters.
What's a rotary mill?
It's the sawmill.
So they cut logs.
They cut logs, and then they made shingles. They made shiplap. The people used to use to put on their buildings.
Instead of siding?
As a siding, yeah.
Okay.
And then they made kindling out of some of the waste products that they had. And the kindling mill was pretty much operated by women.
Really?
Yes, they employed at one time up to 30 women there. So it was a pretty big operation. It was one of the biggest operations in Maine. And so it attracted a lot of people.
So that's how Eagle Lake grew.
That's how it grew. The mill built 25 tenement buildings on that street.
Really?
And eventually it became known as Slab Alley. So when people say Slab Alley, it's because really the mill was piling wood on both sides of the road. So it was just an alley. And then at the end of the alley, they had their tenement houses. Because a lot of the people that moved here didn't have a place to stay. So they rented. They rented from the mill. In fact,
the company store. Huh?
They had built one of those too. They had a company store. They had a hotel, or a boarding house that they called it, but it could accommodate up to 125 people.
Wow.
And what they used to do is they'd contract with these wood jobbers to get the wood to the mill. So a lot of them really didn't have the money to begin to go for a whole winter. So they'd buy all their products from the company store. They'd buy it on credit. And then they'd square off at the end of the season with the company.
Now this was common in those days because my grandfather went in the woods and his wife bought everything on credit all winter long.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd come in, and everybody was doing that, I guess, and pay all his bills.
Yes.
And it seemed to work.
Yeah, it did.
Nobody got, the stores. They trusted, and they.
Yeah. Because when I was growing up here in town, a lot of the stores provided credit.
Really?
I remember going to the store, and my mother would send me to the store with a list but no cash. and
What year was that about?
Oh, that would have been
50s?
Late 50s, early 60s. And I used to go to Gilman DeVoe's store or Philip Blanchette's store and buy what we needed to have. And my father would go in once a month and he'd square up.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, now, your father was, what was he doing?
My dad's name was Orel, and he was a janitor at Eagle Lake School. He was a janitor for some 30 years. But he was also the local handyman. He did plumbing, he did electrical, and he did carpentry. So he moonlighted a lot on his job. At the time when he was janitor, when he was first janitor, it was a town school. And I can remember sometimes people coming over, like Claude Martin, who operated Camps of Acadia. He'd come over to the Eagle Lake School and tell my dad, I got a pump that's gone bad there, can you come over? And my dad would go, leave his work at school and go over there and take care of it. And it was a real informal type of employment.
A different world.
It was a different world, yes, it was.
Now, today, he probably couldn't do that.
No, today, my maintenance people working here couldn't do that. No, they couldn't.
Plus, they need a license. And
Yes.
They need,
so my dad never had a license.
No.
And at the time, he could have been grandfathered in a lot of these things,
Oh, is
but
that right?
but my dad didn't feel the need to do that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but he did that until he died in 1972, 74.
He wasn't old, huh?
No, he was about 60 years old when he died.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, we come back to the early years here. Here's Eagle Lake in the middle of the woods, really. There was always a road all the way up. The 11 was Ashland and all that.
Yeah. The road here had been really constructed because of the boundary dispute.
Yeah.
And they had constructed it from Holton up to Fort Kent. In fact, the settler that settled in Eagle Lake, a guy by the name of Sifuenado, he originally was from Fort Kent. And when they decided to build the blockhouse on the fort in Fort Kent, they took over his farm. So in trade, what they did is they gave him land up here in Eagle Lake. And he ended up settling at in Eagle Lake here on Route 11, place that now we all commonly refer to it as Nadeau Hill.
Oh.
But he was the first settler here.
And what's the connection with him and St. Croix Lake?
Sifois?
It was named after him.
Yes.
Like in Saint Agathe, Long Lake, 100 years ago was known as Lac à Menon.
Right.
Because the first settler there was Menon Ouellette.
Okay.
It's Lac à Menon, see. So I figured, or somebody told me that they couldn't understand what Sifois meant, so they called him Saint Freud.
Yeah, but it was his name was Sifois Nadeau.
What?
So how they came to name the lake after him, or if anybody realized that they did that, and I don't know how the saint came in there, but
yeah,
it eventually came.
In English it might say, Saint.
Yeah, Saint Freud. Yeah.
Now, wasn't he the brother of José Nadeau, who's supposed to be the first settler in Fort Kent?
I believe so, yes. I believe he was, yes. Yeah.
Well, I had heard that story before. I'm glad to hear it again from you, because that's where you live, right here.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was in the 1840s and 50s when they first came here. And then and there was nothing much happening in Eagle Lake until the early 1900s when the mills came. When the mills came,
the railroad was the key.
Yes. But the mill was even here before the railroad.
Oh.
But I think somebody had knowledge of it, because the president of B&A was also the part owner of the first mill.
Oh, okay.
And his son was the one, Preston Burley was the one that operated the mill.
So he was bringing the railroad to his mill.
Yes, Albert Burley was the president at the time of Bangor and Aroostook Railroad.
Oh, okay.
He also served as a state senator.
Was he from Houlton?
He was from Houlton, yes.
Oh, okay.
He was from Houlton.
So we're talking 100 years ago.
Yes.
Plus.
Oh, yeah, we're talking 1902. It's around there.
So this is not his mill that was the big one there.
Yeah, it started. That was he's the one that started that. Him and a guy by the name of Cushing. Now Cushing, when you go to Plaisted, there's on the railroad tracks. It says Cushing siding.
Oh, yeah?
Well, that's because
Cushing siding.
Yes, Cushing. And I always wondered why that was, who that was, and why that was put there. Well, I found out that he was a partner of Albert Burley when they built this mill, the Fish River Lumber Company, and that shortly after the mill was completed here, he sold out and he went and built a mill and placed it, and it was called Cushing's Mill.
Wow.
So at one time in Eagle Lake, and between Eagle Lake and Placid, there were like 7, 8 different mills. It was really a mill town, but not just one. There was a lot of mills, a lot of little mills, plus the big one. Yes,
Woods mills.
Yes, and that it brought in all kinds of people. I mean, we started off with an Irishman, Richard Wood, who got a land grant about a few years after Sfuenado, and then it really started. The population was pretty much French Canadian, but the mills and the railroad brought in different nationalities. The railroad brought in Italians, because basically the line was laid by Italian immigrants.
Right.
And then followed as the mills came in and created a need there for businesses. We ended up with a clothing store by a company called Livingston Clothing Company. And they operated till, I think it was like 1922. But it was the first clothing store in Eagle Lake. It eventually was turned over to Louis Klein. And Louis Klein operated the store. He was the one that probably operated a store the longest of anyone in this community. If you wanted anything, you went to Louis Klein's store.
Is that right?
He sold clothing, he sold jewelry, he sold anything that you can imagine. As a kid, I used to go there, and I used to see all the trinkets that he had, and he was probably one of the better-known stores in the community for being able to provide anything he wanted to provide.
You know, I learned from Dick Dumais, I interviewed him. His father used to have his clothing store in Madawaska, Fred Dumais and Sons.
Right.
Everybody went there to buy their clothing, the men. But it had burned down just before he took it over, and it was Klein's store. Klein's Boston clothing store. And
right.
Then in Fort Kent we have Klein Hill. So there must have been some Kleins there.
Yes.
And there was one here, probably the same family.
Yeah, because with the mill and the influx of people coming in, we had different nationalities. We had like people of Jewish descent. We had the Kleins, the Rappaports, and then we had English-speaking Smiths, and it became really a diverse little community. And eventually, a movie theater was built.
Really?
They took a shed that used to be used by the mill for log haulers, and they converted that into a movie hall on Old Main Street.
Now, if we go back here, this was Main Street?
Yes.
Old Main Street, was it Main Street?
Yeah, that was the Main Street. That's where you had all the stores.
Okay.
You had all the businesses. You had the butcher, you had the general store, you had the clothing store. That was the street where the business community
right at
was.
The end of the lake here.
Yes. Yeah.
Now I imagine
the intersection of Route 11 all the way to the railroad tracks.
Okay. So people could walk to all these.
Yes, and at a time they had wooden sidewalks, so that they had to have wooden sidewalks because it was just dirt.
Yeah.
And and dirt. And then the other thing that they had was, in order to get the water off the roads, they had these ditches, these deep ditches. So it wouldn't have been very convenient to be able to cross from one side or the other.
Les fossette.
Les fossette, yes.
And people used to their septic systems when they didn't have any septic. Everything went in the lake, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Les fossette, pareil, huh?
That's right. Oh yeah, here it was like there was from the time I remember, there was a tremendous need here for a sewer system.
Yeah.
Everybody had their own little methodology of dealing with the waste, and most of it found itself in a ditch.
Yeah.
And so
I know in Saragat most of us never learned how to swim because the lake was too dirty. There's a starch factory emptying into it, and all this, everybody's sewers, you know. So I imagine it was the same here.
Yeah, but we went for a long time. Where the public beach is now, you couldn't go there because that was always full of logs. And even after the mills were gone, the remnants of that still existed. So there was a place, though, on Furlong Road where LeBeff had his house there.
Okay.
Between LeBeff and Furlong, the Furlong residence. Right there, there was a beach, beach area, and that's where people went swimming. The water here in Eagle Lake is pretty clean because it's one of it's the lake that is the center of all the fish lakes, so it empties more often than any other lake. I think I remember someone telling me at one time that it emptied itself almost like once a month, so 12 times a year the water turns over. So
it's almost like a river because there's currents in there.
Yes, there's currents. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the last lake of the chain.
The Fish River, yeah.
And sure, because the first one is Long Lake.
That's right.
And when it starts there, and right at the bottom of the town itself, it was dead water.
Yeah.
And whatever they threw in there stayed right there, except for the wind would carry it sometimes a few miles, and they would come back. You know?
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid here, the municipal dump was along the lake.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was. It was just. Where the picnic area, where the state has its picnic area, you took that road, you went down, and you dumped the garbage right there on the bank of the lake.
Yeah.
They closed that, I think, only in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah. Different world. Eh?
Oh yeah.
So now your great grandfather is the one who moved here from Frenchville.
Yeah, Joseph Raymond.
And
he moved here. He was pretty elderly when he moved here.
Okay.
He moved here with his family. He was like the patriarch of the family, but he was retired, had been retired for quite some time. And in those days, it's like if you lived on a farm and you no longer were able to farm, well, you most likely turned over the farm to the eldest son, which in this case happened. He had a son by the name of Joseph. His name was Joe, and he passed his farm over to Joseph Raymond Jr. Joseph had married a woman by the name of Modeste Piould, who came from the Frenchville area, and he had like 6 children with her. But he died at the age of 34. So he had a brother who at the time was going to the Madawaska Training School. Because apparently in those days the oldest son would get the farm, and the second son would get like a college education or something, or some greater level of education.
Yeah.
So that man that was going to the Madawaska Training School, his name was Leon Raymond, and he was he was the man that became my grandfather.
Oh, okay.
So when his brother died, my great-grandfather called him back to the farm and had my grandfather marry his brother's wife.
Oh, il était pas marié.
No, he wasn't. He was a bachelor.
Okay.
He was a swinging bachelor at the time. So he ended up marrying Modeste Piould, who was then Modeste Raymond. Well, he had
with 6 kids.
With 6 kids, and he had 2 other kids with her. And then she died.
Really?
Yes.
Modeste died.
Yes. And that's about when they moved here to Eagle Lake. So when they moved here, they moved not only my great-grandfather, but my grandfather moved, his two sisters moved, and the family of 8 now moved here to Eagle Lake, and they started working at the mill.
So they gave up the farm.
They gave up the farm, yeah. My grandfather never went to work at the mill. He did all kinds of odd jobs. One of the jobs that he did have was he became what they called a bedou for St. Mary's. So he worked with Father Marcoux.
The sexton.
Yeah, the sexton, yes. And
so that's as soon as he gets here, that's
basically what he starts doing. Because he had learned a little bit of carpentry on the farm, and so they hired him here to maintain really the rectory but primarily the cemetery, because he's the one that made the boxes for the people that and also some of the wooden monuments. So people that couldn't afford the granite or the marble monuments bought wooden monuments, and my grandfather would make those. He also taught school, adult ed.
Oh yeah, he had gone to Madawaska training.
Yeah, in fact, he built that little school there in T15R6, where Hector Bouchard is.
Okay.
On the left-hand side as you're traveling south. He had built that little building. It was used as a school, and he taught there periodically. Because he ended up marrying the woman that became my grandmother, Zéline Ringuet. And she originally was from Saint Agathe, had moved here, had married someone here, and something happened with the marriage. There's all kinds of stories. But she ended up getting her marriage annulled. Father Marcoux ended up annulling her marriage. And a few years later, my grandfather was working as a sexton. He ended up, for some reason, he had met this woman, but she had gone back to her parents. My grandfather ended up having to go to Saint Agathe to live there for a while. Apparently, he was in the bootlegging business, or had done a little bit of bootlegging. He was getting himself close to getting into trouble, and so he escaped and took the train and went to Saint Agathe and went into hiding there for a while, and re-met this lady and married her.
Now, did you see your great-grandfather married Ringuet too?
No, my grandfather did.
Yeah, okay.
So Leon, who had already married Modeste, and she had died, now married Zéline Ringuet. Okay. And it's with Zéline that my grandfather ended up having my father. Okay. And he ended up having 6 kids.
So he had 8 before?
He had 8 before. He ended up with 6 with her. So they had 14.
Bah.
Okay? And she died of childbirth. The last kids that she had, or a set of twins, there was complications, and she died. So he became a widower again. And with all those kids, he couldn't really be a widower for that long, so he made connections with another lady, this time Maria Nadeau, and that's how he ended up in T15R6, because she was a widow. She had 6 or 8 kids, and so he moved with her on her farm. And he stayed there until their farmhouse burnt. And and then he ended up here in Eagle Lake.
You know, that'd make a nice movie.
Yeah, it would. It would.
Especially the smuggling part.
Oh yeah.
Bootlegging. Yeah. Bootlegging, you said, huh?
Yeah, bootlegging. Oh yeah, he was bootlegging.
Well, that was a way of life up here.
Oh yeah, it was.
You know, my father, he had a winter that he was doing nothing much, and he started the bootlegging. And on the last day, he got caught, and he said the agents came from Eagle Lake.
Yeah. Well, that was the agent that almost caught my grandfather. His name was Cash Austin.
Oh yeah, Cash, very famous.
Yeah. So my grandfather had gone into hiding at one of his relatives here and waited for the most convenient time, and jumped on the train and ended up in Senegal.
He went to Friendsville and walked up Senegal.
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating, you know that, because see all the people dying and remarrying.
Yeah. It was hard. It was a hard life.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I hear people say, like oftentimes they'll say, Eagle Lake had its glory days. It like in the 20s there, it was a nice time. Well, it was not so much a nice time. It was a rough time. It was a rough living here.
Yeah.
Mill towns were not easy towns to live in. The environment was really, really rough. People had they had to work hard, and husbands left for months at a time, and it was in the 50s, just to show you how that hard time stayed. In the 50s, we had a guy by the name of Dr. Beth that moved here for a winter to take the place of Dr. Kirk while Dr. Kirk went to Florida. He wrote a book about his experience in Eagle Lake, and it's called Greenwood and Chloroform. And it's a pretty nice book. If you haven't read it,
Really?
you probably should look into it. But he in his book he describes going to someone's house to help deliver a baby, and when he gets there, he describes the house and the furnishings and stuff, and he ends up saying that they delivered the baby on newspapers.
Wow.
They placed newspapers on the floor, and the woman delivered on the floor there on newspapers. I mean, no one. If those were the good old days, there,
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to live those again? You know. So,
Well,
so it's like people romanticize about those good old days.
The good old days.
But it's I hear people say, "Oh, Eagle Lake used to have a roller rink, and it used to have a movie hall, and it used to have this and that." And it's true. They someone attempted that.
Yeah.
But like the roller rink didn't last very long.
Yeah.
The movie hall probably is the thing that lasted the longest in town. But everything else, it's like even today. Someone will come in and they'll try to do a video store. It'll probably work a year or two, and then it changes, and then that goes away. So, but people remember, we used to have a video store. Yeah. But no one, after a while, no one went to the video store that they had to close.
Yeah.
People don't remember that's what happened. So
the thing that's a story from every town around here, almost every town, is how poor people were.
Yes.
And the thing that is common is that they never suffered from lack of food.
That's right.
But they had to work like crazy.
Yes.
To keep food on the table, like canning and going berry picking.
And,
and big gardens, and the wife would work from, almost 24 hours a day.
Well, in my own family, I come from a family of 9 kids. And my father was a janitor, and my mother didn't work until very late in life. And
she worked at home, though.
Yeah, she worked at home. Oh yeah, she did. And we had animals. We had pigs, and we had chickens, and we even had rabbits at one time. And we seldomly went to the store to buy meat. We were self-sufficient in that.
Yeah.
My mother would, when we needed, every Sunday we had a chicken, but it was like we'd go out and get the chicken and bring in the rooster and slaughter it, and I see my mother. My father every year used to buy 50 roosters. Every year used to buy 50 roosters, and I still can see my mother. She'd have to pluck those things. So my father would chop their heads off, and we would bring them to my mom. She would put them in a boiler. She'd dunk them in a boiler, and then she'd pluck that stuff. Then she'd open that up and clean the inside. And she had a weak stomach, so she would do 2 or 3 and then go outside and do what she had needed to do and come back. Yeah, it was pretty hard. It was a hard life.
Yeah.
She used to get up every on Monday mornings, the first thing, all on our street. All the women did the same thing. They did washing on Mondays. And I mean, it was a wash tub, and it was a washing machine with one of those wringers. My mother was one that bleached everything. It used to take her a whole day to wash.
Yeah.
You know, it's people don't realize how much they invested in time and energy to do some of the tasks that we think today is medial.
That's right. You know, and then you had to hang it on the.
Oh yeah, she had to hang it, bring it in. I remember her bringing that in. It was in the wintertime. It was as stiff as a board. Putting that on clothes racks, putting that next to the heater so that, or the furnace, and it was, you know, it's people had to work hard to get what they had, and you're right though. The one thing we didn't have much when I grew up. But we always had food.
Yeah.
We always had food. My mother was a good baker. She was a good cook. And she made sure that we had plenty to eat. As far as clothing, a lot of times it was hand-me-downs.
Oh, yeah.
And we had she had a friend of hers that was a good seamstress. And she used to send us over to her, and we had tailor-made clothes. Today,
for not much money.
No, for not much money.
Yeah. A store-bought piece of clothing was rare.
Oh yeah, we didn't. I don't believe. The first time I remember my father buying us something, and we weren't too crazy about it. My brother and I. He bought us from the Klein store. He bought us some breeches. We looked like Sergeant Preston with those things, and we did not like them. They were green. They had these side wings on them.
Oh boy!
And they were made out of wool, not very comfortable. They were supposed to be hot though, or warm. They were. But I can remember my brother and I, we'd go in the garage there and we'd...
Now these came just below your knee?
Yeah, just, because they went with what they call gum rubbers.
Gum rubbers, yeah.
So it's like Sorels today there. And they didn't go all the way down to your ankle. They went just about, maybe 3 or 4 inches from your ankle.
You had suspenders?
Yeah, we had to wear suspenders.
You know, when I was in school in Santa Agatha, I had short pants and stockings, like a girl.
Yeah.
Honest? Can you imagine?
Yeah, yeah.
And we all looked the same, and little sailor suits. And, So that's a very interesting, lots of stories here. Coming back to why we're here and why you're here is the hospital in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Which starts when? The railroad is here.
The railroad comes in, the mill comes in. There is it's a rough environment. There are accidents.
Yeah.
We have a priest, a parish priest, who's like a human dynamo, always looking to do something. And somewhere around 1904, he communicates with the bishop and says he would like permission to build a hospital in Eagle Lake. And
who was the bishop? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it was
McCarthy or something.
No, I think at the time it was a guy by the name of Connolly. But the next time we hear about a bishop and the involvement, excuse me, with Northern Maine General or the hospital is Bishop Walsh.
Oh.
He's the bishop that we see through the construction period. So the hospital was started somewhere around in the spring of 1905 is when he started building the hospital.
He did get permission.
We don't really know if he got permission then. All we know is that he started. Yeah.
He was determined.
He was determined because Father Marcoux was one of those characters that when he decided that something needed to be done, he did it and then waited for the consequences to come.
Where was he from? Quebec?
Yeah, he was originally from Quebec. Yeah, he had been a missionary.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, he had served, I believe, somewhere in Illinois with the Indians as a missionary.
Okay.
And eventually got moved here. And
so at that time,
excuse me,
he has a church, a little church. Or is it?
At that time, the church is in Wallagrass.
Oh.
Church is in Wallagrass. Because he was first stationed in Wallagrass. So he built a church in Wallagrass and he built a convent in Wallagrass, or a school. You probably have to stop that just for a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
I got to get some water.
We took a little break here. On parle à plein, là, moi, pis toi, là.
Yeah.
Ça fait que la gorge vient sec. But you have a lot to say here, Reynald. It's very interesting. And now we're with Father Marc, who has a church in Wallagrass, and there's none here.
Yes. And his first project here is to build a hospital.
While he's in Wallagrass?
Yes, while he's in Wallagrass. Yes.
Because the population was here, the mills were here? And
yeah, but it had not started like that. I mean, the Wallagrass had, I believe, just as many people in the early 1900s. It was when the mills opened up here that the population started to grow here.
Yeah.
But the parish was really established first in Wallagrass, and then we ended up having a parish here in Eagle Lake.
Now there's a Father Codivo, is there, in Wallagrass there, maybe replacing Father Marc?
Yeah, it could very well be.
Yeah,
I'm not sure who ended up replacing him. Father Marc ended up, he died in 1918, so.
So he had a parish here eventually.
Oh yeah,
somebody replaced him in Wallagrass.
Somebody replaced him in Wallagrass,
okay.
Yes. And here he was admired. I think when I talked to some of the elderly people when I was growing up, he was close. They looked at him almost like a saint.
Now the parish priests in those days, sometimes they were the only ones who had an education.
Yes.
And people went to them for everything.
Oh yes, they did.
For legal and medical and
yeah,
spiritual.
Yes, no, they did. They did. I mean, during the period of Father Marc, I don't believe that there are too many people that did anything that Father Marc did not want done.
Oh, okay.
He was pretty much not only the religious leader, but the civil leader.
Right.
In fact, just give a little bit more about Father Marc. He ended up oftentimes getting himself into trouble with the bishop, only because he took steps before he got permission.
Yeah.
The hospital was one of those things. And like when he built the hospital, he built the shell, but there was really nothing in it. He convinced the Franciscan sisters to come here, and 5 of them went through Clare and came to Wallagrass, and then came here, and they found just a shell. Wow. There was no furnishing. There was nothing. But his goal was, we'll have a hospital. So they ended up deciding that they were going to make it their mission, and they went around begging. And that's how they started getting the stuff for the hospital.
The nuns.
Yes, the nuns. They went around, they begged for beds, they begged for whatever linens they could find. They begged for some money. They raised, I believe, in the first couple of months, they raised like $40-some-odd. And eventually, they got a hospital. They got one of the, at the time, especially in the 30s and 40s, one of the best hospitals in northern Maine. But it was through sweat and hard work that they did that.
Now, just before they had a hospital here, that people got hurt, let's say, there was no place to go.
Nope.
You just fixed it the best you could.
You fixed it the best you could, or
you're crippled for life, or you cut the leg.
Or you died.
You died, yeah.
Yeah.
Infections and stuff like that.
Yeah, because before the hospital here, there were doctors that would come through the area, but they were basically all from Canada. And I think there was one that had opened up a practice in Madawaska and was doing Fort Kent, but there were no surgeons in the area. So if you needed to have surgery, it was like you were on your own.
Now it's amazing, that when we talk about the hospital in Eagle Lake, the first one north of Bangor.
Mm-hmm.
Because another thing that's happening this year, I think, is that Presque Isle is celebrating their anniversary, 100 years.
Right.
And they thought they were the oldest one north of Bangor.
Yes.
What happened there? Did you have?
They were. I don't know. What they when they decided that they were the first, because they were not the first. They're probably the first longest lasting hospital north of Bangor.
Because they're still there.
Because they're still there as a hospital 100 years later.
All right.
But the first hospital was Eagle Lake, and the second hospital north of Bangor was in Holton.
So there were none north of Bangor. It's amazing.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Those towns are pretty big.
Yeah. So I don't believe that we would have had a hospital here had it not been for Father Marco.
Of course not.
I don't think we would have had it. Some people say, well, the mill had a lot to do with it. I think the mill, the principal owners of the mill helped, but I don't believe that they were the engine that brought in the hospital.
Okay.
Father Marcoux was that engine. He figured out a way of doing it. He got the church into debt at a point where they had no choice but to pay. They were angry at him, but it's still...
You mean the diocese?
Yes. They ended up finding out that there was a $10,000 mortgage and no way to pay it, so they ended up having to fork some money and tell Father Marcoux no more. And that's when the bishop decided that he was going to try to control him by forming a corporation. So,
what year we're talking about?
1907. So in 1907, British Bishop Walsh.
Now, is that hospital working there?
Yep.
Is it open?
Yeah. It opened in 1906.
Okay.
And so he was concerned with what Father Marcoux would do. So to control him, he decided to speak to some friends of his that he had in a law firm at Holton, John Madigan, and sought his advice. And Madigan's advice pretty much was, well, form a corporation and get a board. And then the board runs the hospital, not the priest. So that's when Bishop Walsh contacted some other people, 4 other people, and met in Bangor at St. Mary's Rectory there, and actually formed a corporation right there that became Northern Maine General Hospital.
Now, the bishop probably never came up here.
Oh, yeah, he came.
He did?
Yes, he came. He came in 1907, somewhere around there. And then he came back about 7 years later when Madigan Hospital was built. The state at that time, up till that time, had been giving a little bit of money to Northern Maine General. To help to subsidize them, and but when the hospital opened in Holton, it was a newer hospital, and the senator was from Holton, so the money was transferred to Holton Hospital. Well, at that point, the bishop said, "Well, do we really, if Northern Maine General can't make it on its own, and we're not going to get state funded, maybe we should do something different with that." So he ordered Father Marcoux to turn Northern Maine General into a school.
Convent?
Yeah.
Kind of thing?
Yes, like a convent.
Like Santa Gat there?
Yes, something like Santa Gat. And what they had done in Wallagrass, because they had built one in Wallagrass.
Oh, is that
before,
right?
Yeah. So, of course, the bishop didn't realize that although Father Marcoux had built the hospital, really the people who ran the hospital was not Father Marcoux. It was the nuns. He never mentioned that to the nuns. So when the nuns got word that they were going to be probably closing this hospital and turning it into a convent, they decided to go campaigning in town and got some local support to voice their opinion against that. That's when the bishop came. There was an emergency meeting, and the bishop came, and there was no minutes to that meeting, other than the only thing that people heard after he left was that the hospital was not going to close.
Is that right?
And from that point on, the bishop really didn't get involved in the hospital. In fact, from that point on, the first the first 5 members, as their term expired, the bishop never appointed them.
You mean the board?
The board, yeah.
Do you know who they were? There was Madigan, you said?
There was John Madigan, who was an attorney. There was a a man by the name of McDowell. He was the Vicar General of the Diocese of Portland.
Oh.
Then there was the Bishop, Walsh, and then there was a guy by the name Albert Burley, who was the state senator, and then there was a guy from Eagle Lake here, Joseph Michaud, who was a merchant, he was a store owner. Those are the 5 people, and they were all appointed for 5-year terms. But when their terms expired, by the way, the charter that was passed through the legislature, because Northern Maine General was created through the legislature. The corporation was created through the legislature.
Okay.
So the number of people on the board, that's a law. So the law says there's going to be 5 people on the board, with the bishop being the president or his designee. So all these years, Northern Maine General has run with 5-person board, and the bishop or the priest being its president.
So in those years you're talking about?
Those years, including probably the first 17 years that I was here.
Oh, is that right?
The parish priest was always the president of this board.
Oh.
The last priest we had that was president of this board, I believe, was Father Bill. He was the last one, which is just the priest just before Father Netto. Yeah.
So now the bishop, he gave in to Father Marcoux.
Yeah, he did. He did.
And then the nuns, he gave in to them too.
Yes, he did. He did. Because the nuns had worked hard in getting what they considered to be a good hospital. And they weren't about to give it up. And apparently there was enough people in town when they had that meeting with the bishop that he became convinced that he should just leave things alone. So they never really, his office never really got involved. The church really never put a lot of money. In fact, I don't believe that after that period that they put any money. Any money that was made through the hospital with the sisters.
It's like Fort Kent, I mean, they ran it and they supported it.
Oh yeah, it was the same. It was the same group of sisters.
Yeah,
Franciscans. Yes.
Now, do you know if they came to Fort Kent first or here first?
No, I believe they went to Wallagrass first. Most of them came here as teachers.
Oh, okay.
So they might have been in Fort Kent before they were in Eagle Lake as well as teachers.
Oh, okay.
But the first nursing people came to
because Fort Kent, our hospital was started in '52. So
yes,
that's 50 years after you.
That's right. That's right. The hospital here was struggled pretty much until around 1926. And then in 1926, they got Dr. Kirk.
So who was here before for doctors?
They were traveling doctors.
So you could go to the hospital and be no doctor there?
Yeah. You could go to the hospital to be no doctor there.
But they had skilled nurses.
They had nursing.
Women who knew, the nuns who knew how to take care of patients.
Yes.
Almost like a doctor.
Almost, except they didn't do surgery.
There's no surgery.
They didn't do surgery.
Yeah.
So, and they didn't do too many deliveries either. Because it was against their religious principles. So
most people had babies at home with a midwife.
Yes.
Which sometimes
that was
a grandmother or a neighbor.
That's correct. Yeah, very few people that were born in the hospital until the 1940s.
Yeah, because you had one right here, so maybe people in Eagle Lake used it sooner. But most people, like my brothers, who were born in the mid-40s in Santa Agatha, it was all born. Yeah. The doctor would come to the house.
That's right, and that was a lot. I mean, here at Twin Town, even if we had a doctor, the doctor would normally come to the house.
Yeah.
And do the delivery there. If there was no complications, that was the end of it.
Yeah.
So, anyways, when Dr. Kirk came to town, Well, then the hospital ended up with the first time having a doctor
26.
on staff. Yeah, 1926.
Now, what brought him here?
He left from Baltimore, and I really don't know what got him here. I heard stories that his dad was also a surgeon, and I'd heard that he had come up here to practice a little, and then went back and tried to and convinced his son that this might be a good place for him. So I don't know what is fact there and what isn't, but I know that he came here in 1926 and he stayed here as a doctor until he died in 1977.
50 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, did he ever talk about the impressions he got when he got here?
Yeah, he didn't. Well, the story that was reported back in the 40s when a newspaper man had interviewed him. He said he left Baltimore and the birds were singing and the sun was shining, and he came here in November and there was 18 inches of snow. And his word to the reporter was that if he'd had money in his pockets, he'd have gone back home. So it was probably to our betterment that he was broke and he couldn't go back home, because Dr. Kirk, for his time, was an excellent surgeon. He was well known not only in this area, but he was well known throughout the medical field. And it's reported that he began certain types of surgical procedures that other doctors in other areas used. He didn't like to be credited for some of those things, from what I'm told, but he did some surgeries.
Well, you think of him, whenever we have a war, doctors, get to be better because they see so many wounds and all kinds of. They have to invent ways of.
Well, here he saw all kinds of wounds.
And he did that here too.
Oh yeah, he saw bad cuts, broken backs, broken hips. I mean, here if you got hurt, it was severe.
Yeah.
Because if you were working in the woods and you were on the drive and you got caught between the logs, it was not just an ingrown toenail that you had a problem with there.
And you cut your foot with an axe.
That's right. So there were some severe wounds that
a tree fell on you. And,
that's right.
Now, coming back, before I forget, the logs would come here to these mills, right? And on the beach there, like you say. So the lake was kind of full of logs. I mean, in this area?
They would basically what we normally see when we go down to the lake at the beach area.
Yeah.
That whole cove would have been full of logs.
Yeah,
all the way up towards Nadeau Thoroughfare, because it came down both Nadeau Thoroughfare and Square Lake Thoroughfare. They would link those up with booms. The mill eventually had a steamboat that they had built that would bring those booms towards the mill, and then they were put into ponds. And
so you'd start cutting pulp wood at Fish Lake and Portage Lake,
yes,
St. Croix, and Long Lake and all that.
Yeah,
Mud Lake and Cross Lake, and eventually we're
all come here.
Come here
to Eagle Lake.
Isn't that something?
And that's why that's why they chose this lake to put those mills on, because it was the last lake on the Fish River chain.
Yeah. Plus Nadeau Thoroughfare is not far from here.
That's right.
So if you put it in another place, you couldn't get the logs.
That's
there.
right. You couldn't get the logs there. Yeah. So here you could get the logs from the entire Fish River watershed.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of logs, and it created a lot of business for not just the people who worked in the mill, but also the people who worked in the woods.
Yeah. Plus the people who own the mills.
That's right. That's right.
Now, what's at the other end of the lake there before we get into the Fish River? There's a.
Oh yeah.
That has nothing to do with logs.
No. That was a net that was constructed sometimes, I think in the 30s or 40s, probably in the 30s during the Depression there, through some civil program. But it was a net to try to make sure that the salmon would not go downstream.
Oh. So the
So it was
salmon
the-
from all these lakes?
Yes, this would be their last stop, and then they'd have to go back upstream, but they would not be going down the Fish River into the St. John and out to the Atlantic.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So they would landlocked salmon?
Yes, it was landlocked salmon, and they had those nets that supposedly would keep the fish in.
Yeah.
Eventually, it just wore out. The stories that I heard was that a lot of the fish got caught in the nets, and you had people that would walk on these
what do they call it?
piers.
Piers. That's what I was looking for.
And try to yank them out. So I remember when I was a kid, and that they finally did away with the nets. There was a real. I mean, we had meetings after meetings where people were after fishing game to rebuild those, to reestablish those nets, and they were not successful in being able to do that.
So that was a nice source of fish for the surrounding people.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was easy to catch them.
Yeah, it was easy to catch them.
So this was those piers they're still there.
Some of them are still there. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
the
only purpose there was to.
Yeah, I always
have
thought
a-
it had
have
to
a
do
net.
with logging, but
No, it didn't
more
have
with-
anything to do with logging.
it's more with fishing. Huh?
Yeah, yeah. So with Dr. Kirk, he grew this hospital so that by the 40s, this place is doing real well. What happened, Dr. Kirk became like the savior, and he also became the downfall of the hospital. Because part of it had to do with what ended up with his health. He ended up contracting TB, tuberculosis. And eventually he lost a lung.
When was that?
That was in the 30s that he had.
That was common then.
Yes, it was. And he ended up losing a lung. And ended up, as a result of it, not being able to really withstand the cold winters. So he decided that he was going to be a doctor here in the warm months and go to Florida in the winter months. And at first, that really didn't have much of an impact, because what he did is that before he left, he always found a doctor to come and replace him while he was gone. So that worked for a while. But in the summer, when he'd come back, he'd want the business again.
Oh yeah.
So as long as the doctor that had come was coming with the anticipation of only being here for a short period of time, that was okay. But some of them decided that they wanted to really stay, and so they started looking around. One of them was Dr. Hungs.
Oh yeah.
Dr. Hungs was here for 6 years, and then eventually went to Fort Kent. And he went to Fort Kent when they built the hospital in Fort Kent. And he became their chief surgeon over there. So basically, he and Dr. Kirk, although they had started working together, ended up being competitors there. But that was the beginning of the downfall of this hospital, because when Kirk had a hard time now over the time finding people to come who were willing to give up their practice once he came back, then the hospital was for months without a doctor. And if they did find a doctor, sometimes the doctor he would find was not a surgeon. So now they had a doctor who couldn't do surgery. So the surgery now had to go to Fort Kent. So, however, that in 1951, when Fort Kent opened up People's Benevolent Hospital, the nuns here were helpful in their organization was very helpful in getting that hospital open.
In Fort Kent.
In Fort Kent, yeah. And by the 1960s, they're here. The nuns were getting pretty. They were very much thinking that Northern Maine General Hospital would not be able to withstand, because they simply could not get a doctor to stay all the time. And they couldn't get that doctor because really of the way Dr. Kirk wanted to practice.
Yeah.
So I think they started losing faith in the hospital here. And in 1966, they gave 2 weeks' notice that they were closing the hospital.
Wow.
And they gave that 2 weeks' notice to the board at the time. Now, the board at the time was made up basically, well, people. There were 3 people at the time, just before the hospital closed. It was Gilbert Michaud, Philip Blanchette. Gilbert Michaud was the postmaster. Philip Blanchette, who was a store owner, and John St. Peter.
Placed it.
From Placed it, yeah. Those were the 3 people that were on the board. Eventually, just before the hospital closed, John Martin got involved and became a board member.
That's when he started his career.
Yes, around in 1965, 66.
Yeah,
that's when he started. So those are the people that were told that the hospital was closing. And they got 2 weeks' notice. Now, there are no minutes at all to any board meetings because they were never able to get from the nuns financials. The only financials that they ever got were oral. There was never any written financials, never any audits, nothing like that done. So when they told them that they were closing the hospital, and the trustees asked, "Well, how much money is here?" They were told it was $40,000. So I remember Philip telling me that he couldn't believe that this hospital, having done what it had done, had only $40,000. But they didn't want to push it because they didn't want the nuns to leave. Because without the nuns, they knew they didn't have a hospital. So they pretty much just took their word for it.
Fort Kent has been in existence 15 years.
That's right.
So did they have quite a few patients that still came here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah. No, they had quite a few patients over here. Well, when Dr. Kirk was here, the hospital was full. But the issue was, when he left all winter long, then there was really no hospital anymore.
Now, Longstead, do you know what year he came in? Mid-40s?
Yeah, probably in the mid-40s, yeah.
He's from Pennsylvania, I think.
Yeah, don't know that much about him.
I wonder what brought him up here. Was it Kirk? Did he have a connection?
Yeah, no, Kirk brought him up here because Kirk was going to Florida.
Okay.
So he was one of the first doctors that Kirk brought up here.
And then he wouldn't let him stay or something?
Well, he didn't want to share. He didn't want to share his practice.
Yeah.
So I remember Kirk. If you went to see another doctor, he'd come to your house and
tell you off.
And tell you off. Because if he was your family doctor, he couldn't understand why you would change.
Oh yeah.
So I remember my mother had one delivery that she had someone else other than him do it, and he came to my parents' house and he asked my mother what was wrong with his ability to help deliver. He had delivered all of us, so why would she worry about this one?
Oh boy.
And I know that she felt pretty bad about it, but she was she had decided that she did not want to have Dr. Kirk as her doctor anymore, and she had made that decision. But Dr. Kirk didn't like that decision at all.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. So he wasn't too kind to some of the people that he brought in here when he came back. He expected them to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of them did without any problems. But, we had a Dr. Sterling. We had a Dr. Beth. Dr. Beth was an Englishman right from England. He came here with an umbrella and one of those hats there.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It took the people a little bit of time there to adjust to him because they first of all they weren't used to the accent, and then the way he dressed, and he always walked around with an umbrella.
Now Sterling, did he go to Fort Kent?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Sterling also was someone very different in the area because he was our first black doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I don't think I ever met him. He must have left before I.
Yeah.
I've been here since '63, and I've heard of him. Maybe he was here a year or two after I was here. But,
yeah.
So he was from away too. From
yes, he was
down country.
Yeah. Not all the doctors that came to the hospital here, along with Kirk, were all from away.
Yeah.
Dr. Johnson was another one.
Right, from Canada.
Yeah.
And of course, in town in Fort Kent, we had Dr. Albert and Savage and Toussaint.
Yes.
these were local people there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they practiced there before the hospital was there, I think.
Yes, they did. Because Dr. Albert practiced here.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
So the doctors in Fort Kent, before their hospital was built,
came here.
Would come here.
That's right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Savage to Saint-Albert.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Willett, Father Willett, Dr. Willett.
But he probably came maybe after the hospital, huh? Was he?
Yeah, he was, but I know that he came here as well.
Came here too?
Yeah. 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 So by then, it was 1966, and the hospital was going to close. And now no one, it was like, what's going to happen now? And if it wouldn't have been for Philip Blanchette, well, really, there are two people. Philip Blanchette pushed hard, but John St. Peter and John Martin are the ones who saved the day.
Really?
Yeah, because they're the ones who went to the bishop. And yeah.
Now John's a young.
Oh yeah, he's only in his 20s at this point.
Yeah, early 20s.
And John St. Peter told me a story when he first hired me. My first job, by the way, was working here when I was 16 years old. John St. Peter hired me here to dig sonotubes by hand. And I was in high school at the time, and I needed a job real bad, and John St. Peter gave me a job over here. So my first real job was working at Northern Maine General. Probably be my last job too, working here. But
so you were going to high school in Fort Kent?
Yeah, I was going to high school in Fort Kent. And John St. Peter told me a story that when they closed the hospital, he and John Martin made an appointment to go see the bishop. And apparently the bishop was not too enthused about seeing them. So when they got there, they were seated in the lobby and they waited. And apparently they waited. It was in the late part of the afternoon, and they still hadn't seen the bishop. And they were pretty much told that they probably wouldn't be able to see the bishop. And John St. Peter said, if I don't see him today, I'll see him sometimes because I'm not leaving. And apparently, not much time later, the bishop came and had a meeting with them. The result of the meeting eventually was that the church turned over ownership of Northern Maine General to the board, so that the board became the operating force, still under the same charter. But
where were the nuns there?
Well, the nuns wanted to sell the place, but what they didn't have is they didn't have the deed. So the bishop was going to either sell the place to the community, the Franciscans, or sell it to liquidate it in one fashion or another. So they convinced the bishop that he was going to sell it. He was not going to sell it, that it was going to be operated by a board that was going to be appointed like the charter had said. So the agreement was that the parish priest was going to be the president instead of the bishop, and then there would be eventually four other members.
So the church, the diocese still owned it?
They still owned it.
The building?
Yes, they still owned all of the assets.
Okay.
All the assets, except the capital, except the working capital. That was owned by the Franciscans, or the hospitals, or the hospital. But they left the board here with $40,000 and no records. No records. There is no records of the hospital at all here. No financial records whatsoever.
Isn't that something? Huh?
The rumor is that they either burned them or they took him to the mother house. But there are no records of the hospital here.
Now, do you know why such a quick exit?
Well, they had already made a decision that it was Fort Kent they were going to support.
Okay.
And no longer Eagle Lake.
Okay.
So what happened is that John Martin and John St. Peter had heard about it. So they went to Fort Kent, and they got, I believe, 2 nurses that was working in Fort Kent to agree to come here when the hospital closed to take over the hospital. Oh. So and that's what happened. When the hospital closed, those two nurses came. And they became the first people to run the hospital that were not of a religious order.
Okay.
And that was Maria Dubois.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? She was an RN. And I believe the other one was Maxine... she was also a nurse at the Fort Kent, I believe.
Not Lorraine Cody?
No, Maxine Mazareau or something like that.
Okay.
But they were the first two people that came here after the nuns left.
Where's Kirk? Did we know?
Kirk is still floating around.
In 66?
Yeah. He's got his office there at his house.
Okay.
So he's practicing medicine there. And then when they closed here, there were people here. There were people here.
You mean patients?
Oh yeah, there were patients here. So they maintained the patients. They got doctors to come in, and they didn't accept any new patients, but the patients that were here, they kept them until they were able to be released. And then they had people that over time had become boarders there at the hospital, because they were operating like a hospital and almost like a little boarding home. So we had 3 or 4 people that were living there as boarders.
Now, besides the nuns, they had people working there.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all kinds.
Oh yeah,
of stuff
yes, you did.
Cleaning and
Right.
cooking.
Yeah, cooking.
So these were still there when the nuns.
Oh yes, they were still there.
Now at the same time, they were having a big crisis in the Catholic Church. So the Vatican II comes along.
Right.
And a lot of nuns leave.
Right.
And it's a big crisis.
Mm.
And so maybe that was part of it too. I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't know, other than what I've been told by some of the people that were on the board as to what the reason was for closing the hospital. Primary reason was the doctor, lack of consistency in having a doctor. That was the primary reason, and then I think the nuns over time just saw that if they couldn't make that change, they'd never be able to have a hospital that really worked. And so they decided to throw their weight and their support with a hospital that had already been able to do that, which was in Fort Kent.
So how long did the hospital last with those 2 nurses?
Well, what happened is that it lasted about a year. During that time, we had a new parish priest that came on board, Father Perry. And in 1967, Father Perry contacted a different religious order. He contacted Sister Dennis, who led the Mercy Sisters, and convinced Sister Dennis to have the Mercy start a mission in Eagle Lake. And eventually, and he was able to do it. And she sent 5 nuns here. She sent Sister Fatima, Sister Celine, Sister Celeste, and Sister Caroline.
Now, Sister Celine, that was a Martin from Madawaska.
Yes, she was a Martin from Madawaska. Yeah. And she was appointed business manager when she came. She preferred to play the organ, but she was a business manager.
Very, very well liked.
Oh yes, she was.
Now that's from the Martin family. Her brother created the Paul Bunyan statue in Bangor.
Yes.
Norman
yes.
Martin.
Yes.
And there was a big Martin family there in Madawaska.
Yeah, and Sister Celine, on her mother's side, was a Raymond. And I can trace my ancestry to her, so she's one of the few there that. So we used to joke about that we were like related there. But yeah, she was a very, very nice lady there.
So how long did you say? Okay, 1 year later.
Yeah, 1 year later, they're the ones that are here. They do pretty much what the Franciscan sisters did. They came here. There was no hope really. Just an idea of trying to keep the place alive, and they came up. The board said, "Look, one of the things that we don't have around here is we don't have long-term care. So why don't we convert this to long-term care?" and that became their mission.
Okay.
And they did. They opened up at the time it was called boarding home, nursing and boarding home. They took the hospital itself, the building, and then one section was boarding and another section was nursing home. They're the ones who ran it. They're the ones who trained people to help, and they ran it until 1973 that way. And in 1973, they built the nursing home, which was a 60-bed facility. It was the newest nursing home in the St. John Valley.
They did.
Yeah. Yeah.
That order of sisters.
Yes, that order of sisters. The board was instrumental in getting the financing for it and stuff. John especially was instrumental in being able to convince, well, today it's called rural development, but in those days it was called FHA, to provide a loan.
John Martin.
Yes, to provide a loan for that idea, and they built a brand new facility, and Sister Fatima became the administrator. And then they separated it. The hospital building became strictly boarding, 40-bed facility.
Now boarding means what?
Boarding is assisted living. Yeah, you can go out. Yeah.
You can have a car.
You can have a car. You can
go dancing.
Yeah.
They just help you to.
They help you. They provide. You cannot live by yourself normally if you're in boarding, because you've got some health issues. You may need supervision with medication. You may not be able to cook. You may not be able to provide yourself with laundry and stuff. So,
would you be, let's say, disabled and be
you could very well be disabled. You could very well be disabled.
Even though you might need a wheelchair? No?
Yeah, yes, yeah. Even though you could need a new wheelchair.
Okay.
We had people, for example, who were amputees.
Okay.
That were there living as boarders.
So now you've got a great thing here going.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yes, we do.
Where's Kirk in all this?
Kirk hasn't left. Now Kirk comes in every day to see the boarders, and he charges them $5 every time he sees them. So he becomes the medical director of the nursing home.
Okay.
So he doesn't lose anything.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, he still goes.
And $5 was a going price for an office visit.
Oh yeah, it was. So he didn't really feel any impact because.
Now, how old is he by that time?
Oh, he's pretty old.
He came here in 26.
Yeah, he came here in 26 and he died in 77.
He was at least born in 1900, so now he's in his mid-60s.
Oh, older than that.
Older than that?
Oh, yeah, he's in his late 70s.
Yeah. Did he ever have a family here?
Yes, he did.
He did?
Yes, he did. Yeah. He had, they're all older than I am, so I never got to know them. But I know that he had a couple of sons, I believe, a couple of daughters. In fact, I met one of his daughters. I met some of his family when we celebrated our centennial. They came from.
When was that? Oh,
it was 2007.
2007, yeah.
A group of them came from California. They're living presently in California, and then there's another group of them that were living in Massachusetts.
So this was their home.
Yeah, they came here. Yeah,
they had a connection here.
Yeah, in fact, I believe he had a son that got killed here.
Oh, is that right?
Playing baseball.
Really? Now, how old is the town of Eagle Lake? Older than the hospital?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The town of Eagle Lake started in the 1850s, around 1856. But it got incorporated only in 1913.
Okay.
So they celebrated their incorporation this, 1911, that the town was incorporated.
Okay.
So
there was a celebration.
Yeah, they celebrated their
100-year
incorporation, but the town was really established in 1856.
Yeah, it's like Fort Kent. We celebrated in '69.
Yes.
But the town had been there since the Aroostook War.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a little break here because my battery's getting short again. Okay. We'll go look at some pictures.
Okay.
Raymond, Reynald, while we're here, this is a brand new building we're in.
Yes. This is a brand new office building.
Is that picture in this hall here of it?
Yes.
Let's look at that right now, and you can explain it to me.
Come this way.
Oh, it's not this one.
No, this building.
The one right here
Yes,
on the left.
that's correct.
That's the building we're in right now.
That's correct.
That's about a year old.
Yes. And it was built on the site that used to be the resident building for the nuns.
Okay, Le Couvent.
Yes. Okay.
All right, and there's the next to it is the office building for the doctors who
that's
practice Fish River.
That's Fish River, yeah.
Yeah.
And then below, going down the road, the first building that you see,
Okay.
that's the aquatic pool.
Oh, that's right.
We have an aquatic pool there where we provide therapy, both land and aquatic. And then the building adjacent to that is the gym building,
Okay.
and that's connected. That's connected right here to this building. But that's the building that we provide day program services to adults with developmental disabilities.
Did you say the big building on the left? Now, what's that again?
That's our gym building.
Okay, that's your gym.
Yeah, gym building and classroom building.
So that's used for exercise and stuff.
Yeah, that's used for exercise.
And there's quite a few buildings there.
Yes, and the building right opposite the pool building, that's there are two waiver homes there. That's what we used to call Powell Memorial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you call them?
So one is called Mamie Home, which is a waiver home for 4 people that have developmental disabilities.
So
And the
that's
other
what
one-
a waiver home is?
Yes, and then the other one is Floyd Powell Waiver Home. Same
Okay.
thing for 4
Paul,
people.
Linda General, Linda speaking. How may I direct your
And
call?
then below
Alright.
that is our shop, which we use for storage.
Okay.
And then
Now, what's the connection with Powell here, Mamie and Red?
that facility or those facilities were named after them because she was a public health nurse
Okay,
and
yeah.
worked a lot with people who had mental retardation.
Okay.
And those facilities were started to help people with mental retardation.
Okay. And Red Powell was a
And Red Powell was
professor
her
at
husband. Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
All right. So let's come back to this brand new building, which was the residence for the nuns. I remember that building.
Yeah, that was a 2-story building,
Yeah.
and it was replaced with this one,
Okay.
which is about double the size of the other building that we used to be in.
Okay. Now we're here at the original hospital, huh?
Yep, that's a whitish yellow building.
Yeah.
That's the building that was built in 1907. Not all of what you see there was built in 1907. It's a progress.
Yeah.
The last piece that was added to that building was somewhere around the late 1940s.
Okay.
And then the building with the blue roof, that's the nursing home.
Okay. That's the one that.
That's the one that was built in 1973 and added to in 1974, 75.
That's a big building.
Yes.
What's the capacity that you said?
That's a 60-bed facility.
Nursing home.
Yeah. 40 nursing and 10 assisted living right now.
Okay. And the original building is what again?
The original building right now is used as a mental health residential building.
And that's got 3 or 4 stories.
Yes, it is. The 3 stories with a cellar. Yeah, the big building.
So
There are
we're
16
talking,
people who live in that one now. Used to be 40, but we downsized it to 16 people, and we provide a residential setting to people with mental health needs.
Okay. So you are, again, let's repeat how many people are employed by Northern Maine General.
Between anywhere between 275 to 300.
That's amazing. Is that what you say?
That's the newspaper article that was written by the Bangor Daily about this hospital in 1940 something.
46.
Yeah, and here's Dr. Kirk.
Okay, let me
And
zoom
here's
in on
there's
Dr. Kirk.
yeah, in his prime.
And the
And
nuns.
here's Dr. Hunks,
Oh, Dr. Hans.
who's performing an
Surgery.
appendectomy there.
Oh, yeah. So he was here quite a few years before Fort Kent opened.
Oh, yes. Yeah. He was here at least 6 years.
And then some. Now you're starting to see nurses besides the nuns, huh?
Yes. Yes.
See, that's not a nun there.
Nope.
That's a nurse. Is that babies in there?
Yes. Yeah.
And then over here is another.
That was a nursery.
Another.
That was that was what they used to call the wards.
Oh, okay. You had several beds, and
Yeah.
here's a sister Franciscan at the time, right?
Yeah. Franciscan.
1940. Here they are again. Boy, they did a lot of good work up here, huh?
Yes, they did. That was Fish River Lumber Company right there.
Look at the houses behind the mill.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel. About 100 years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Plesacamaco, Fish River?
Yeah. Fish River Lumber.
So what is this here?
That was the two stacks that they had. One for the sawmill and the other one for the kilns.
Okay, so this is the mill here.
Yeah.
Fish River Lumber Mill in
Yeah.
Eagle Lake 100 years ago.
And you see, if you look right next to the, right here,
Okay.
there's a lady here with an umbrella,
Yeah?
big dog, and she's speaking to a man.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that something?
Shows you the size of that.
Yeah.
And in fact, in 1930.
The mill. This
Yeah.
mill burned down.
Yeah, it burned right to the ground.
Did it go down just a little bit of it, or just
No, the whole thing.
Everything burned down.
Everything burned. And basically, it closed there. There was no more mill in 1930. From 1930 on, there was no more mill.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And
That
then
took
what
care of the
happened-
town.
It pretty much killed the town. Yeah. Then what happened is that this mill,
I can
it's
see.
the same place. It's the same place. This is
Oh.
the railroad tracks. Okay?
Oh, this became Chubby's place.
Yes. That's what became the old mill marina.
Oh, yeah. Well, who owned that one?
That was a guy by the name of Batts. And he came here from somewheres out in around the Great Lakes area. And he had an idea of using our, we had a large crop of rock maple, sugar maple.
Okay.
And he decided that there was at the time, there was a real market for bowling ball pins.
Oh, they were made out of wood.
Yes. So he built a mill to make bowling pins.
Wow.
Now, when I was a kid, you could see those bowling pins that they made everywhere. They had them with the Canadian leaf on it.
Oh, yeah.
It operated only for about a couple of years. He put in $1 million at the time. And they sold stocks in town to people and stuff. It went bankrupt.
Now, the maple leaf was because this was maple wood?
Yes, maple wood.
Had
yes.
nothing to do with Canada.
No, it had nothing to do with Canada.
So this didn't last long?
No, they sent their first shipment to Japan because that's where their market was supposed to be. And so, by the time it got to California and got to the people who were going to export it to Japan, they rejected. They rejected the supply.
Wow.
And when that was rejected, that was his major supplier. It just.
Now, what year was that? Do you think?
That was in the 50s.
After the
From
war.
50 to 55. Yeah.
After the war.
Yes.
Now,
This is the mill that eventually Tom Pinkham bought.
Now they
and
made
turned
other.
that into a coat hanger mill.
Right.
And it operated until 1977 as a coat hanger mill. And between 75 and 77, Tom Pinkham had moved and built a mill in Nashville.
Ashland.
And when that mill opened and was in full force, then this one eventually closed. And that was the end of the mill industry in Eagle Lake.
Okay. So the big mills of the 100 years ago, that in 1930,
That was gone.
the
was
whole
gone.
thing went down.
The whole thing went down.
They didn't have
So
much.
there was a depression. Not only was there a
Oh
depression,
yeah.
but there was no longer any place to work. So that started in the 30s there. That's when you started seeing the outward migration.
Yeah. People are going to Connecticut.
Yes, they're going to Connecticut.
Yeah.
And then the war accelerated that because now people went to the army. And when they came back, they had experienced something that they had never experienced up here in Eagle Lake, which was more opportunity.
Yeah.
And a lot of them left.
Yeah. Now, do you remember do you know the population of Eagle Lake at its peak?
Yeah, it was somewhere around 2,300.
You know, that's as big as St. Agathe used to be.
Yeah.
In the 1920s. Like here, St. Agathe had a movie hall. They had a lot of stores. And now they're about 800, I think.
Yeah, that's about what we are.
Is that right,
Yeah.
huh?
It's about what we are.
Everything is the same up here. The out-migration and everything like that.
Yeah.
Now, what's this here?
Oh, that was...
On the lake?
Yeah, that was... they were... those were the sleds that they used to pile some of the logs on.
Okay.
And bring them...
See, these are great pictures, huh?
Yeah, they're pretty nice.
This is, again, here the old mill before it burnt?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can see the stacks and the houses and everything. Wow. Wow.
And this is the first, this is adjacent to the hotel at the time, and it was owned by the Pinettes, and that was a car rental company.
Oh, you can rent a car?
Yeah, you could rent a car.
Look at the barn behind it.
They had a blacksmith shop there, and you could rent a car.
Still have horses.
Yeah.
Now, the Pinettes, those from Watergrass, Soldier Pond Pinettes, you don't know?
I don't know who they were. They were gone by the time
yeah.
I was old enough to. And this is taken in 1960.
Let me see now. I'm trying to get the light out of the way here. 1960.
Yeah.
Now you can see the old Main Street.
Yeah, this is the old Main Street right here.
And there's a lake behind it with some fish.
And there is the mill stack.
Oh yeah, for the Pinkham Mill there.
For the Pinkham Mill, yeah. And that right there is the old convent.
Okay.
It's now the town park. But that was built in 1916 by Father Marcoux.
Wow. And was it the Franciscans that taught there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the road to the dump there?
No, this is the road to the dump right here.
Okay.
Okay. This is Old Main Street, or what used to be the Main Street.
Yeah.
This is Dennis Street. Here's what is the American Legion, but used to be the Dirigo School.
Oh. Now
you can see the fishing cabins there on the lake there.
Yeah, we can see the fishing cabins
little
right
dots,
there,
yeah.
Little dots. But here, this big building beyond the convent, that's the...
That used to be Philip Blanchette's store.
Oh, I see.
And that burnt. And that's where now Eagle Lake Grocery is.
Okay.
Then the store across the street, or the building across the street, right adjacent, used to be Gilman DeVoe's store.
Okay.
And that burnt.
Really?
And that's what. And now it's Four-Way that's over there.
Okay.
Four-Way store.
Now, there's people that own this store after it was rebuilt there. Before it was probably was known as Eagle Lake Grocery, but they were Frolich, is it?
Yeah, Frolics, yes.
Frolic, okay.
Yeah.
They're not here anymore.
Oh yes.
Oh, they are.
Oh yeah. The lady, the man died not too long ago, but his wife's still here. His kids, one of his daughters, in fact, works for us.
Okay, so they ran that store.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go see some more. It's interesting.
This is Old Main Street, or. Now, what I've been told is that the people are all outside that day because there's a fire. Whether that's true or not, I don't know there, but...
they're looking at something.
They're all looking at something, yeah.
Hey, boys,
you can see the wooden sidewalks that they had.
Yeah.
You also notice that there's no electrical or telephone poles.
Okay, no telephone pole.
Because electricity didn't come to Eagle Lake until 1928.
Right.
The only place that had electricity in the early 1900s was the mill.
They generated it?
Yeah, they generated it themselves.
Now everybody had a ladder on the roof,
yes.
Huh? That was
either a fire escape or it was to go and deal with a chimney fire.
Chimney fire, or clean the chimney.
Yeah.
We don't see that anymore.
No. one of the biggest enemies was fire.
Yeah. Still is, as we saw in Fort Kent there.
Oh yeah, doesn't take long. So you see another picture of that first mill there, Fish River.
Let's have a look. Okay. Now you can see the lake.
Yeah, this is Slab Alley right there. And look, the mill goes all the way here.
Oh yeah, we can see the logs and the
some of the logs are there.
Isn't that something? Hey, this is a big building here. Raymond.
Yeah, it is.
Huh?
It is. Sorry.
This picture here.
Yeah, excuse me.
Usually that's the first question I ask.
So that is a hospital in the 1940s.
Wow, look at that. Now that was not the original. That's bigger than...
Yes, they had just added this section.
Okay.
This is the original piece. You can see the dark versus the white part.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sit low.
And this is the hospital the year it closed in 1965. Yeah. First time I came to the hospital was in that room right there, the first room, on the first floor.
You mean right here?
Yeah. 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 And that's the back side.
What's the... attends, il y a tout le temps de lumière dans mes chambres, mais c'est OK là, je l'ai là. Now what's this hall?
That's the back side of the hospital.
Okay.
There's a connection between the hospital and the laundry room.
Oh, okay. That was built a long time ago.
Yes.
Oh, I think I remember seeing that.
That building is still there. We use it as a shop. That's the same shop there. But it's a nice picture.
Oh, yeah. You see, so the laundry building is still there, you see?
Yeah. We use it now as the agency workshop.
Okay. The cars look like they're 1960s.
Yeah, because that would have been 1965.
Oh, okay.
66.
All right.
Yeah. That's the same year, just a different angle.
It's the same, like sideways or something?
Yeah.
You can see the back, the porches in back there?
Yeah.
Wow, huh?
This is the operating room.
During the Dr. Kirk's time.
Yes, yeah. And that was one of the patient rooms.
Yeah.
In 1966.
Okay.
It's pretty plain.
Yeah, it's bureau là.
Yeah.
Now here
that was the lab.
Okay. Centrifuge and all that.
Yeah.
Microscope.
And that was the nursery.
Okay, that's when the little babies were born there.
Yeah.
And what is this one?
That was their sterilizer.
Okay.
Medical name for that, but I don't know what it is.
We're looking at Father Marcoux here. Yeah, okay. Isn't that something, huh? Oh, and of course they had a
That
chapel.
was the chapel, hospital.
Yeah. Chapel, Dr. Kirk.
Yeah, in his raspberry garden.
I remember him. Now, how many kids did he have, did you say? You don't
at
know,
least
huh?
4.
4, huh?
And these are the last nuns that were here.
Okay. Quite a crew?
Yeah. No, there was
10, 12, 14, I think.
Yep.
Wow. Huh.
That's the board of directors with the 2 administrative nuns.
Okay, there's Mr. Blanchette on the left.
Yeah, Mr. Blanchette, John St. Peter in the center.
John Martin on the right.
On the right.
All about 1966.
Yes, yeah.
C'est vrai que John Martin Derren.
Yeah.
That's a little kid.
Yeah.
Dr. Kirk and Father Thibodeau.
Yeah.
Did Father
That's
Thibodeau...
the last years that Dr. Kirk was here.
Okay. Now, Father Thibodeau was a parish priest. Right?
Yes, and he, as a parish priest, he was the president of the board.
Okay. He's from Caribou, and he did the Easter service for us this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And here's an office.
Yeah, that was the business office.
Okay. Now, here I see a picture of a nun down there. Is that Sister Celine?
No, this is Sister Mary Louise. Let's see if I can put it somewhere. Sorry, you can... let's see here. That. Oh, that's freaking cord. That's Sister Mary Louise.
Okay.
She was a Mercy nun. She was the pharmacist.
Okay.
She opened up the Eagle Lake Pharmacy over here.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And then this one, Sister Celine.
Oh, yeah. She hasn't been gone that long, huh?
She left here in 1996.
Yeah.
Both her and Sister Mary Louise. They were the two last nuns here.
She's passed away since.
Yeah, she's passed away since.
Yeah. C'est intéressant. Regarde le Père Marcoux là-bas. You know, I see him better from here because the lights are not in my way. Father Marcoux, hey. Gotta thank him for what he did, huh?
Mm-hmm.
This is the Eagle Lake Church. Now,
and that church was built in about the same time as Northern Maine General Hospital, and I think it was the church here in Eagle Lake until 1971.
was it?
And then it was torn down and a new church was built.
Now, was it where it is now?
Where?
Close.
Yeah, very close.
Yeah.
Where the church used to be, that's now the parking lot.
Okay.
And the church is now where that building to the south of it is.
Okay.
That's where the church is now.
And it was known as St. Mary's.
Yes.
Too.
In that picture, they were building the rectory that year. You can see the lumber there.
Oh, yeah. At Old Main Street. Are we?
This is off Old Main Street. It was called School Street. The school was to the north of those buildings.
Now,
So-
let me see there. I see a name in front of it. It's a store.
Yeah.
And it's called Klein?
Yeah, Louis Klein. That was the first clothing store we had in Eagle Lake. It ended up being a variety store after a while.
School Street. I'm trying to think where that is now.
That's
You go down Old Main Street
you
now?
go down Old Main Street,
Oh, okay.
and it's your first left.
Okay. Klein store. Look at that. You got les escaliers pour monter là. Now, why the stairs? Because of flooding, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is not too far from the lake.
Right.
It was called the Derico School. Before you built your grammar school of today there.
Right. Yeah, it served as the grammar school until 1965.
So was that run by the nuns too?
No, that was the town school.
Public school.
Yeah. In that school we had grades, I think it was grades 6 through 8. And then the convent was kindergarten through 6.
Okay. So now this is the American Legion, you
Yeah,
said.
that's the American Legion.
And at the railroad station now there's a smokestack behind it.
That's the mill.
That was the mill that became Chubby's restaurant. Huh?
Well, that's the site, yeah.
Yeah.
But
the
that's
site.
the original mill, so
Oh, I see.
that would have been the railroad station prior to 1930.
Okay, so this is real old.
Yeah.
Did you have one for a long time at a railroad station?
Yeah, we had that until 60s.
Huh.
Yeah. With the logs.
So the lake is full of logs. Look at that. Oh,
yeah.
Geez, you know. And
And
we see
there's
the
a man,
mill.
you can see a man on the logs right here.
Oh, yeah. Hey, for let's say bravo, huh?
Oh, yeah.
To get on those logs. Now, when do you think the logs moved out of the lake?
Oh, it had been in the 50s.
So you were a kid here when this was still
Yeah,
here?
well, one of the mills was still operating there,
Yeah.
and we used to go on some of those logs and fish between them. Fish for smelts. Drive our parents crazy.
Nobody ever fell in?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
But
Oh, boys.
we certainly didn't tell our parents.
Looking at Catholic Church Wall of Grass, it doesn't say the name and you don't remember it either, huh?
No, I don't.
So this is Route 11 we're looking at.
Yeah, that's Route 11 heading north.
Oh, so the church was on the other side of the
Yes, it was.
street there.
And
There's
that too was built by Father Marc.
Is that right?
There's the convent on the other side.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Franciscans were there at that time.
Yes.
Look at Route 11. When you had rain or you had spring thaw, must have been quite something, huh?
Yeah.
Wall of Grass Church. Did they build another one? Did it burn down? What happened to that church?
They tore that down and they built a cross.
Okay. Okay,
That's,
what do you got there?
That's another picture of Route 11. Seeing the church on the hill and the convent.
Oh, you're still looking at Wall of Grass?
Yes.
Oh boy, look at the convent. Convent is still there. I think it's an apartment building now. And then there's something else behind it. Wow. We see a close-up of the convent. Now that building's still there, Reynald.
Part of it.
Part of it.
But that burnt and they rebuilt it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that one burnt there and they rebuilt it.
Now what's that?
Much smaller than the original one.
Okay, that's big, all right.
Yeah.
What's behind it there? I see a peak there. It looks like a church, or is that part of the convent?
That was part of the convent.
Yeah, over there.
That was Father Marcou's signature. Every building he built had one of those. That was the steeple.
Okay.
That's where the bell was.
Okay. Okay, so this is the real first hospital.
Yeah.
Porches all around it.
Yeah.
They got a porch on the second floor, too.
Yeah, they do. They eventually put that. The first year they didn't have the porches. Then they added the porches.
Yeah.
They had a windmill because the only way they could get water.
Oh, yeah.
There was no electricity. Everything was lit by kerosene lanterns. Electricity didn't come till after 1928.
Yeah. Different world, huh?
And then this is Plaisted.
Okay. Let me take a look at Plaisted. Oh, yeah, look at
And that's the time where this is the Cushing Mill. They had a mill in Plaisted there that was built in the early 1900s. After he sold his share of Fish River Lumber, he moved to Plaisted and built that mill.
Cushing.
Cushing, yeah.
Where was he from?
I'm not sure. I think from the Holton, but I'm not too sure.
So Plaisted was a town by itself.
No, Plaisted was a siding. It was a railroad siding.
Oh.
That's what it was.
So it was always part of Eagle Lake
It
town?
was always part of Eagle Lake.
Okay.
Yeah. It was always part of Eagle Lake.
But they did
It would have
have...
been like what Fort Kent would call North Pearly Brook, South Pearly Brook.
They didn't have their post office.
They did have a post office.
Just
yes.
like Fort Kent has Fort Kent
Yeah,
Mills.
Fort Kent Mills, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Hey. Reynald, I want to thank you for showing me all those pictures. Or those are special.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have those made yourself? Or you're interested in history, I guess?
Some I collected over time.
Yeah.
Others that I found in a museum, Penobscot Museum,
Really?
and ordered them so that we would have them here. We use them here at the hospital or at the agency here, especially at the nursing home. We display them for the residents and especially the ones that have dementia. It helps them to remember things of their past. So yeah.
Now, most of those are postcards, right?
Yeah, most of those were taken by a photographer who came here up in the St. John Valley in the early 1900s and made postcards out of it.
Yeah.
Eastern Illustrated was the company he was working for.
So we see a lot of those.
Yeah. Fort Kent has them.
It's great stuff. Now, you went to work for John St. Peter at 16.
Yeah.
And so what's the rest of your career? How did you...
Well, I was first I started off working with my dad as a janitor. And then...
at the school?
At school, yes. And then from there, when I was in high school, the school wasn't paying me very much.
You were 9 kids?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were in the middle of it?
No, I was the oldest one.
Okay.
So I came here to Northern Maine General. They had just closed the hospital. I had heard that they were doing some renovations and stuff. So I asked around, and John St. Peter decided he was going to hire me. So he hired me for the summer. My job basically was to dig holes to put sonotubes, and then in the fall bring the hay, because they still were operating a farm over here at the time. So I helped him cut the hay, bring the hay in the barn, and so that was my real commercial job outside of my father getting that.
So the hospital was self-sufficient?
Pretty much.
Like most homes?
Yeah.
And like the convent in St. Agathe, they had their own farm.
We had a nun here, Sister Giselle. She ran the farm.
Is that right?
She had gardens. She had livestock. They had chickens. I remember my first experience when I came here in the hospital. That's the first time I had homemade ice cream, and it was made with the dairy products that they had over here. So. It was good. Yeah, that was very good. So from there, I went to school. I became a school teacher. I taught my first year. I taught in St. Rose.
St. Rose?
Yes.
Did you go to...
I went to Fort Kent, yeah.
St. Rose, Quebec?
Yeah. I went there, and I was an English teacher.
Oh.
At the time, they were looking for some people to teach English, and there was really no real opportunity around here, so I decided to go try that for a year.
You're not married there?
No, I was not married. Then I came back, and I taught at the Fort Kent High School for about close to 10 years. And then from there, when I left there, I applied to be the town manager in Eagle Lake.
So we're talking, you're teaching in high school in Fort Kent, what years?
From 1972 to 1982.
So you might have taught my kids?
I did.
Oh.
No, I taught your kids.
You're teaching
Carl and Dan, Kevin, yeah, I taught them all.
Christine. Now, were you teaching English then?
No, I was teaching political science.
Okay.
Because that was really my major, was government and economics. So that's what I taught at the high school. And when I left there, I was interested in politics. All I had done was teach. I hadn't really lived it. So I figured, well, I'll see what it's really like. And so I applied and got the job of town manager. And that was an interesting 9 years. Yeah. My brother was town manager before I was. And then
he was younger than you.
Yeah, he was younger than me. And then when he left, I decided to go and apply for the job that he was leaving. I got it, and I stayed there for 9 years. And then I heard that the CEO over here was leaving. And
so we're in about the early 90s.
Yeah, we're in 1991 right now. And I applied, and I got the job. I didn't think I was going to stay here this long, but it was the first job that I really got that I was never bored. There was always something to do. There was always something to build. There was a new service to put in place. So we went from really being a nursing home to a multifaceted healthcare system since I've been here.
A lot of decisions to be made.
Yeah, but they've all, I mean, some of them are challenging, but it certainly keeps you on your feet. But time really moves fast. And,
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the work here, and I've enjoyed. We got a great group of people working here, and we have an excellent reputation for the services that we're providing. So I'm proud of the agency and the people that work here.
Now, people are here from northern Aroostook, or are they from all over the place?
They're all from all over the place.
Yeah.
We've built a reputation over the years of being able to handle the most difficult.
Really?
So oftentimes we have people from southern Maine that know they really can't find a place. They come to us, and we provide them the service, and we've built a niche. That's why I think we're still in business today, of dealing with people that a lot of people don't want to deal with. We deal with aggressive people. We deal with people that really have unique needs.
Isn't that something, huh?
And
so you're still special in Eagle Lake.
yes,
It's like saying, well, we had the first hospital north of Bangor. Now you've got something here that's not available everywhere.
that's right.
So you must have quite a few professionals.
Yes, we do. We hire we hire PTs, we hire OTs, we hire nurses, we hire clinicians, social workers. When I was growing up in this town, the only opportunity you had was to become a school teacher if you went to college and come back and wanted to come back here.
Both boys and girls.
Yes, because there was very little. I mean, other than if you wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or something. Now we can say that we provide opportunities in a lot of communities in the St. John Valley, a lot more than we ever did, because now there's opportunities in all those areas. Nursing.